And today, theme June 2020, we are going to be discussing about the future of work in Africa after the COVID-19. So this forum, this webinar is put together by HI for African HI Forum, the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Public Service, IQ Farm and IQ Farm Foundation, and Clarence Associate. Today, I have with me some very interesting people, all African, of course, who are going to be discussing the topics we have today. So without further ado, I would like you, my distinguished panelists, to introduce yourself, 20 to 30 minutes, 20 to 30 seconds maximum, so that our audience can know you and can know what you do. So we'll start custody and protocol. I will start with the ladies. Mrs. Rain, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. So I'm Rani Sobmaji, the founder of Evolving Consulting, a digital transformation firm that is based in Cameroon and France. And I'm also a board member of GCAM, which is the Business Council of Cameroon.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Lourdes.
Hello, my name is Lourdes Lobede. I am the CEO and founder of HR Lands, which is a consultant company that helps organizations to develop global capacity and also to develop their HR managers and officers to sustain that change. I'm based in the Netherlands, and I'm very happy to be here with you guys today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having your time to joining us in this session. Dr. Francois.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Imurangira Francois. I am the director of ILO Decent Work Team for Central Africa and the ILO Country Office for Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, and Sao Tome and Principe. I'm glad to be with you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jacinto Owono, Ngema Owono, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacinto Ngema Owono. I am the General Director of Local Content at the Ministry of Mine and Hydrocarbon of Equatorial Guinea.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having your time to join us today. And next panelist is Mr. Hiram Kalonji.
Hi, everybody. First off, greetings to you all. My name is Hiram Kalonji. I'm the program coordinator and lead instructor at Grooming Leaders of the World here in Kinshasa, DRC. And I'm glad to be here with you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thanks for having your time to join us here today. So we are going to be discussing about the future of work. When we talk about the future of work after COVID, people may ask, oh, we are still dealing with the COVID. But we want to know, as experts of various fields, we want to know, what do you think will happen to Africa post-COVID-19? So those are the issues we are going to be discussing today. And our first block, the effect of COVID-19, and special attention to the informal economy in Africa. So without further ado, I have questions. Given the parallel and novel unseen situation, what measures do you think should be taken by companies to overcome the negative effect of COVID-19 in Africa? I will start with you, Mrs. Lourdes.
Thanks for the question. There are different measures to combat the negative effects of COVID-19. First of all, we need to take into consideration that each country has been affected in a different way. Fortunately for Africa, the effects of COVID-19, the mortality is not as high as in other countries. So that's an advantage that we need to build upon. However, we have seen that the informal sector is the one that has been hit the most. And because they are not tax contributors or social, they're not into the intricate of the social security system, it's very difficult to get hold of them. But what we can do to combat the negative effect is to try to extend to as much as possible from private companies the communications that they give about COVID-19, for example. The access to that communication could be, if you, instead of you just focusing on your employees, you make that information accessible to your employees' community, then the impact that you will have will be bigger and higher into that community as well. The coverage, make sure that the coverage that you provide to your employees also covers to some extent the immediate families as well. Building cross capacities is one of the issues as an HR manager that I see that is one of the most important things. We've seen that some employees could not continue as usual the business or continue working as business. So businesses not only have lost the ability to continue to produce and provide the services, but they also have seen that they need to make sure that people are ready to take on different and several tasks. So building capacity within their own organizations without depending on external sources is also a very important task to take on. And I could go on and on and on, but I think my fellow panelists will also like to contribute from their own point of view.
Thank you very much. I would like to hear from you, Mrs. Rain, about the topic at hand.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I will start from the formal sector and a global perspective. I think that the first measure we all have to take from the Central Africa is to reinvent ourselves. We have been doing things in a very old way. And this is really a situation where we need to face our issues and reinvent ourselves. And the COVID-19 has actually shows that we really need to grant access to the internet to everybody, every organization and every single person. Access to the internet at an affordable cost for everyone. We also need to reinforce our legal framework. During this pandemic, we have been working, we have been teleworking actually without any legal framework. And this is some of the things that we really need to address. We also need to accelerate the digital payment. We have been, doing a lot of mobile money payment, accelerating those and not having the whole legal framework and also interoperability between all operators in that sector. So digital payment is something we really need to look out. And most globally, we really need to think how to continue the activities, either from the public services perspective or from the business perspective. How do we continue the activities, the services, in the case of pandemic or any, breakout that could survey? And I think from this, I'm glad to hear from the other panelists.
Thank you very much. Dr. Francois, being a director at the International Labour Organization, I want to hear your perspective. What do you think companies need to do to overcome this negative effect that this COVID-19 has brought upon all of us, not only the employees and the employers, but all of us, even the people at home. So I would like to hear from you, please.
Thank you very much. I think companies and even individual persons, even governments, they need to do 2 or 3 things. One, it is simple, but it's not always applied. It's protecting lives, protecting the health of people, of the staff, of the employers. That one is very important because the COVID-19, they show that we have not enough invested in people, in health system, in social protection. So everything which protects lives of people, health people, we have not done a lot, not done enough, not invested a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of effort to ensure that human beings are protected. That is what the lesson we can learn from COVID-19. So one is to protect people. Second, of course, we need to protect the tool if we work, the enterprises. That tool, the way of doing it, of course, is through dialogue between the government, even employers, and the partners to ensure that enterprises continue working, continue providing jobs, continue providing services, even in a situation where it's not easy. So I think this is very important to ensure that people are protected by putting some protective measure, like, for example, committees on health and safety at work, which have to be functional, have to be operational, have to have enough equipment to protect people. And then you need to set up some kind of working environment which is favorable to dialogue, because of a government alone, employers alone, or workers cannot do anything about this pandemic. We have to work together, ensure that everything is put in place. And also, you know, the situation is evolving. We don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. So I think there is a need to dialogue all the time to ensure that we adjust to the situation according to how it evolves. We cannot predict what is going to happen tomorrow after tomorrow. It's natural for human being not to be able, unless you are somebody special, but we have to be modest and dialogue all the time to check whether all measures put in place they are functioning. If they are not functioning, what we can do to correct them. And there is need for dialogue, social dialogue at all levels to ensure that everything is put in place, but also it's adjusted according to the situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jacinto and Mr. Hiram, I'll be with you in a second. I just want Dr. Jerry to introduce himself since he's just joining us. Dr. Jerry, please, we would like you to introduce yourself. Your microphone, please.
Yeah, no, thank you for welcoming me to this meeting, important meeting in light of where we are. And I'm glad to be a participant today in this dialogue. So thank you for welcoming me.
Thank you very much for joining us. Yes, Mr. Jacinto, with you, as a government employee and somebody who deal directly with companies who are operating in not in the informal sector, but in the formal sector, which is the oil and gas industry, can you tell us what measures the government is taking during this pandemic so that people can keep their jobs and so that the companies also don't lose money after COVID-19? I would like to hear from you.
Thank you very much. First of all, before I answer to your question, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the organizers for taking such a wonderful initiative. As well, also I'd like to thank all my panelists and everybody that has taking the time to tune in today and share those special moments with us. To go to your question, I think we need to ask you ourselves and be realistic with ourselves. Is it going to be after COVID-19? That's something we need to ask ourselves. Or will this be the new normal? And if the answer is this will be the new normal, and then we need to face that. We need to embrace that and face that and know that this is not going anywhere. Anyway, we will have to learn from it and live with it. So, and with that, come to the one thing that the first step that we should take, if that was the answer, is the education. So we need to educate ourselves. We need to educate the people around us toward the COVID-19, how to live with it, what should we do, and how to survive with it. Life cannot stop because of the COVID-19. We need to learn how to live with that virus and carry our life as normal. Because to my humble view, I believe this is going to be, my humble view is that this is going to be the new normal that for a long time we will have to face. And in order to survive, we need to educate ourselves how to live with that normal way of doing things and running the business. Going to your question, what the oil and gas industry has done, especially in Equatorial Guinea, which I'm pretty much involved with, is the industry has themselves to take the time and educate people. And the government has been along with them, giving the tools and taking measures that it will protect the investment as well as the population and their employees and everything that comes together with that. Recently, our government, especially the Minister of Mine and Hydrocarbon, my boss has been very close with the oil and gas producers and the entire industry. We have created a new way of doing business, and we try to innovate ourselves and live with what we have. At the beginning, before the COVID-19, we used to have a regular meeting face-to-face, but in such a quick way, we learn how to use the internet. We innovate ourselves now. Everything that we were doing before the COVID, we are doing that right now, but everything is based on web. So we think that this may be the new normal, and it will take for long for that to go away. What the government is doing is first, the first priority is to protect our people. That's go with anyone that is working in the oil and gas, also with the entire population. We have been working on not only producing the oil efficiently, also our priority has been thrown, and now the main focus is to protect people and to give them the tool and that they can perform in the safe way. This is what we have been doing in the past since the pandemic began. And we see that this will be the new normal. COVID-19 doesn't look like it's something that is going to go away overnight. So our goal has been to innovate ourselves, reinvent ourselves, and see how we can carry out and live together with that virus. Believe it or not, or you want it or not, it looks like it's going to stay here for long. And somebody has mentioned that what the company here that in Equatorial Guinea they did is they send everybody home. They stay home. They are being paid, but we know that this is not sustainable. So the company has to keep generating income for the stakeholders. So they said, when we came out, we sat, it wasn't face-to-face meeting anymore. It was a web meeting where we decided that they have to work from home. So we went, it was something new, but the company gave them the necessary tools that they need to perform from home. The internet was installed in their houses, and it was affordable, and the company is paying for that, so that individual they can perform from home, and this is preventing the business from not stopping. We're still producing the same way we were producing. This has allowed us not to stop the operation. We have made some adjustment, so in the way that we can continue producing and giving back to the community and keeping our people employed. There's a lot that I want to share. This sounds like very interesting. I had a lot that I want to share, and I will stop here in order to give my panelists.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jacinto. We will be with you in a second. I'll just want to hear from my next panelist, being from DRC. We all know it's a huge country with huge potential. I think the most gifted country on earth. So I just want to know how badly the country has been affected during this COVID-19 pandemic. What is the formal sector doing, and what is the informal sector doing, and what is the government doing to bring everybody along? Mr.
All right.
Professor.
Yes, thank you for your question. First off, I'd like to echo the sentiments that have been indicated by the other panelists regarding the fact that at least as much as everybody's been affected by this, the mortality rate in Africa hasn't been as bad as many people predicted it would be, especially here in the DRC, and I can mostly speak on it since I'm experiencing it firsthand. What we've noticed is that in as much as it's been a negative event, it's basically shed light on how flawed the system had been, not just in Congo, but in Africa as a whole. And in as much as the formal sector have been able to send employees home, still be able to pay them, allow them to work like with all the new technologies and all these different things, we still come to the reality that not everybody faces the same challenges, because when you still work in an office place, you have the benefits of being able to share infrastructure that the company provides. But when they send you home, we still have issues like even right now as we're speaking, the reason why I cannot even speak from the office, I had to go in a place where the lighting is even better because they have organized power cuts in certain parts of the country. Although the good thing is that the government has made that water and electricity is free of charge at the moment, so people aren't paying for it. They've also made sure that nobody can get kicked out of his place of residence, even if they're forfeit on paying rent. So that's also been some good measures that they've been doing. But like Mr. Jacinto said as well, those are measures that have been taken right now, but they're not sustainable. And in the informal sector, to show you how critical it is, the country didn't even get shut down 100%. I'll take Kinshasa, where I am right now. They literally shut down just one commune, Gombe, which is where all the main administrative offices are. And everybody else is still allowed to go about their way, even though they're still taking safety measures. In taxis, you're not allowed to be more than a certain number of people. You still have to observe the social distancing and all these different things. But just by doing that, it shows us how we have to revisit how things have to be done. And we have to basically start having the right conversations. Yes, technologies and all these things are good. Yes, we need to accelerate ways of moving funds and capital here and there. But to me, at the heart, especially coming from an education background, we need to start having that conversation again about how a lot of positions right now in business are very redundant. We see that right now, like Mr. Jacinto said, productions haven't been crippled as much because we realize that many positions are redundant. You don't need as many people to do the same job.
And moving forward, what companies I believe should do is within their respective sectors, come up with funds to where we can start bringing back apprenticeships. We can bring back ways for people to learn jobs like firsthand, because if none of these things are done, we're still going to repeat the cycle that led us here. It's not COVID-19 that broke the system. It just revealed how flawed and broken it was. So I think that that's where companies should relook at how we empower the people, how we give them the tools to be able to do that. Because it's not only by keeping us healthy that we're being protected, but it's also by allowing us to be fed, to be able to support our families with the right tools and measures to get those done. So to me, the companies and the private sector has a bigger role to play than government, because government is doing all it can do right now, but we can see that it's not enough. So the private sector has to get free rein to do more for the locals. That's basically my take for right now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Jerry, I would like to hear from you regarding topic of discussion at the moment. What do you think what measures do you think companies have to take to overcome the negative effect of the COVID-19 in Africa?
Yeah, that's a very important question and a big question, because as the colleagues have said, it will take all the social partners. And the social partners include unions, trade unions, include, of course, Federation of Employers, includes the government, includes the community. And let me add that the community, of course, is constituted of the church also. So all the stakeholders must, in my view, have one vision. And in our case in South Africa, I think we had a total lockdown. So the economy was shut. And you will know that we are a developmental state, a lot of poverty. Our economy wasn't doing well anyway. It was one of those economies that were not really kicking in full gear. In as much as it wasn't growing as it should, but we were hoping that there were green shoots, things would change. So what happened with the total lockdown is that obviously people lost their jobs. We're already in a cycle where jobs were being shaded. So this has accelerated that. I mean, it's been sad to see companies closing. Over the weekend, I just went to one of the biggest malls around where I live, and it was actually quite depressing to see the number of shops that have closed, to see restaurants that I'm not sure they will reopen. I was actually talking to one of the guys that run the Chefs Association. So those are the chefs who work in all the hotels and all the restaurants, in all the, most of the guest houses will be members of this particular association. And he actually said, listen, we already know through webinars that we've had that a lot of these guys are not going to come back to work. A lot of these institutions are not going to open. So it's very difficult. In as much as companies have tried, I mean, initially, so because government also said we will support organization, a solidarity fund was set up to help companies to at least pay salaries, right? Even though they were not making any income, but to at least supplement the salary, not the same salary. For instance, maybe pay up to 70% of the salary for April, May, because the lockdown was initially 3 months, it then was extended. It's now been categorized into 5 levels, so our level 3 now, which means certain things are not open. Only yesterday, our president announced that salons, for instance, which is in the informal part of our businesses, will start opening. The ministers now must come with the rules, regulations. How is that going to be done safely? So only yesterday the announcement was made. So we know that salons have been totally shut down, but now they have to reopen. They must, as our friend said, they must also open, recognizing that the virus is still here. We haven't even hit the peak yet. So we know the projections that the scientists, the epidemiologists have told us is that we should expect a peak in about July, August, maybe even September. So we know we're going to live with things. Your question is, what can companies do? I think the first thing to try and preserve jobs, but it's difficult to preserve jobs when you're not making an income. and to be able to pay for your staff. So that's a big challenge. But the state has also said they will try and provide a minimum allowance to everyone, which is, we know the money is going to run out, because if your revenue service is not collecting from these companies, where are you going to get revenue? So it's a huge challenge. My thinking though is that, in fact, I think as a continent, we really need to look at how we work together as a continent, because part of what happens is that the intertrade is not, things that we could be doing together as a continent we are not doing. And I think that is stifling some opportunities that we have. I am in a way gratified that there seems to be a strategy for the continent to deal with this. I mean, I'm aware of a coordinated effort to at least try to manage the epidemic or the pandemic. To your question, formal business, those that have deep pockets, I think they must try as much as possible to prolong employment of people, even if people are not getting 100% of their salaries. I mean, most CEOs in our country actually reduce their income. Most boards, I sit in a couple of boards, most boards decided they're going to forfeit their fees for the time just to help the companies, but to sustain themselves. But that is not a sustainable position. Informal sector is difficult. I actually don't know how those informal sector businesses are going to rise again. I don't know.
Thank you very much. My next question is going directly to you, Dr. Jerry. I like that you finished that you don't know how the informal sector is going to rise after the COVID-19. So what do you think? So how can this negative effect be mitigated at all workers by providing with the protection and measures that government have to put in place in Africa?
Yeah. So as our colleague from the Congo or the DRC has actually indicated, I mean, education here is key. So the first education, which I think we should almost at full steam try to educate our populations to adhere to, is to save lives. That's the first thing, because without people understand, I say this because sometimes you go into areas and you just think people are almost thinking the virus is over. Now that the lockdown has been lifted, it means we can just go back to our old way. So I think education has to be consistent for us to be able to at least preserve lives. That I think is key. In reviving these businesses, of course, is that they must trade, but they must trade safely. And there's a lot of care that will need to come through to be able to do that. Because, I mean, we all have realized all that a lockdown does is just to try and flatten the curve. It doesn't take the thing away. And hopefully until we come closer to having an injection, a prevention that people can use to do that. So I think for now, my emphasis would be, let's try to preserve lives, because it is those lives that are going to help revive the economies. The skilled people that we have that are going to help us to revive the economies. But we must gradually, as I think all countries are doing, and kudos to those that never went to a lockdown and they've been able to suppress or to flatten the curve. But I think that's what we need to do, is to carefully open the economy, all sectors of the economy, including the informal sector, but emphasizing and making available the equipment or the protective equipment or clothing that people can use in order to make sure that they're safe. But again, people must use that stuff properly. I mean, you see people wearing the mask and you can just see this is not on. This is not what it's supposed to be. So I think first of all, let's just try to get lives, preserve lives.
Mrs. Lobede, please.
I'm listening to a lot of really good points from my fellow panelists. But for me, I will summarize into the ideas that we have right now. The first of all is changing the way we think about ourselves in Africa. That's the number one thing, and the change the way we do things in Africa. Just to give you an example, we are a continent that has 1.2 billion people. And yet we are struggling to serve or produce things to sell in Europe that only has 741 million people. So instead of focusing my struggle in selling my products or my services to a place where my services become redundant, if I focus in just trying to fulfill, first of all, my basic needs in the African continent, but one person, let's say just 100 CFAs to 1.2 billion, I'm already making more money and focusing that on what am I exporting to outside. So as the fellow Jerry said about the inside trading, this is one of the first things that we need to take into consideration. The other thing is looking at what do we need, first of all, to stop being dependent from outside help. And the third one will be for me, and the most important thing is I know that we are focusing on the private sector and how do we protect the workers that are already in the system. But our focus and our efforts needs to go to bring those people in the informal sector into the formal sector, gradually doing that. And the only way to do that is, one, by education, and second, promoting associations where the people in the informal sector can contribute easier and easily to the system as well. So if we can guarantee, for example, a simplified method for them to contribute to the social security, now the government, instead of having, maybe they will not have as many funds as with the private sector, but they will have a bumper they can use when these type of events occur. And in the long term, a little is better than nothing. So the informal sector for me is where we need to put all our efforts and try to also shape and change that informal sector into what we really need. What are the skills that we really need in the society? What are the basic needs that you as a country need to cover in order not to be dependent to another person, and try to drive that informal sector towards producing whatever the needs for that country is in the first place. Dependency is what is dragging us down. So if we can avoid dependency, we can look at other ways to survive.
Thank you very much. But I would like to ask you a specific question based on what you just said. What can be put in place for young Africans to commercialize the skills they have acquired? Because well, it's not enough going to the university, getting a degree. At the end of the day, you come back home, you don't have a job. Because degree does not translate to job.
Yep.
And the degree also does not translate to wealth creation. So what can be put in place?
And this is a very good, I'm really happy that you made that question, because one of the things that I have highlighted is that there needs to be a conversation, a deeper conversation and communication between education, the private sector, and the labor sector. So the Ministry of Labor, the public administration, and so forth. The private sector needs to tell us what are the skills they need to demand. And that private sector needs to speak with the education sector. So when we look at the skills that we need to look at what is the machine that we have to produce those skills internally. And once we know the machines that we have or we don't have, then we can invest in that machine to give us the type of skills that we really need. Because if I am sending everybody right now, for example, in oil and gas producing countries, there is this fixation with engineering and everything that has to do with oil and gas. And the only thing that is leading at is that whenever the oil and gas sector fails, there is no other sector to back up. We really need diversification. We really need people to think outside what we are actually doing and all the other sectors that need development.
Thank you. I would like to hear from Dr. Francois, being a labor expert. So what are the measures do you think that can be put in place regarding the topic at hand?
Good question, very difficult questions. I think, you know, there is no, I'm sure there is no universal solution. It's difficult to say. We can speculate, you can say we can do, but I think what is important, it is dialogue, always dialogue, existing dialogue between governments and the formal economy sectors associations. This dialogue will, of course, produce good ideas, good and take major actions. I think it's very important. We cannot predict what the informal economy, because the informal economy, you know, it's 80%, more than 80% for economies, more than 80% than 80% for economy. I used to say that this is the real economy. It's not just you can migrate 80% of the economy to 10% of the economy. It's impossible. We never. So what can we do to improve the working condition of informal economy workers? What can we do to improve the business of small micro enterprise in informal economy? What can we do? This could come from this dialogue, because we have to listen to them. Government have to listen to them and say, what do you wish to what do you want? How can we help you? It's not just enough to say, okay, we decide that we set up the legislation, say, okay, you have to do this. It's not working. Sometimes, you know, when governments won't say the informal economy, migration from informal to informal, it's just for tax. Go to identify the tax, not just for helping them to grow. So I think we have to listen to the people. You think that informal economy is something which is not organized. They are organized. They have informal or formal associations. So we have to identify and listen to them, what they want. How can we help them? So it's very important. That's it. There we cannot decide what is going to happen. Of course, I think the informal economy will be worse off, because, you know, some people from the formal economy will lose jobs. Our colleague from South Africa said it. Many people will lose their jobs. It's clear. We have having studies on the impact of COVID-19 on enterprises. We know that without having figures, we know that there will be a huge loss of jobs in the formal economy. Where these people are going to go? In the formal economy to be able to survive. So the informal economy will grow, but will not grow in the good sense. It will grow in a bad sense. Now, how can we do to help them to grow in a good sense? Good sense, meaning that they improve their business, meaning that the informal economy workers, they have good condition of working. The informal economy workers, they have social protection. So these kind of measure, how do we do that without listening to them? Without talking to them? How do we do it without setting up some kind of measure? For example, access to credit, small credit. They don't need a lot of money. They just small, little money to improve their business. So what can we do to help them? So that one is it's very important. I think there is a need for...
Doctor, before I finish with you, I just want to ask you this simple question. I like that you mentioned the access of funds. How do you think the informal sector can have access to this fund? We all know what is going on. It's difficult for the little enterprise, or the small and medium enterprise, to have access to funds. So what do you think, what measures do you think that can be put in place to help?
Maybe if we think that, of course, they cannot access to the banks, the big banks, but we have what we call microfinance. They can access to this fund, but the government, they should set up some conducive measures, conducive environment to ensure that these microfinance develop, grow, and be accessible to informal economy, And you know, they can also do it through the cooperatives, the associations. You don't need to go to use as an individual. Maybe it would be difficult, but we have many experiences in many countries, even in Africa, where we have, like in India, we have Grameen Bank, where we have, in Africa, we have other examples. Good example that show that even these informal economy workers, women, they can access to retail fund and improve their business and the payback with even the interest. It works, but I think government should put up some kind of legal framework which is not very targeting informal economy workers, informal economy, not just because the law, the legal framework we have, I think in Africa, many in Africa, it's favorable only to big businesses. So I think we have to think, to rethink the way, as we see that the informal economy is 80% of our economies. So we have to proportionately to put up measure to help them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. Mrs. Rain, I just want to ask you two questions in one. In your opinion, what will happen in Africa, especially in the informal economies after COVID-19? And what should be their response?
Well, you're asking a person from the Business Council to talk about the informal economy. I think that first of all, we have a lot of issues to address in Africa, and we don't need to oppose the formal sector to the informal sector, because the reality is that here our government needs money, okay, to finance any kind of program. Should be a social program or another program, the government needs money. Where does that money come from? The money comes from oil, come from any natural resources, or from the taxes. Now that the price of oil has shrunk, the money will come from the taxes. And what we can see in several countries, like in mine, is that most of the time when there is a shortage of revenue, then the government will tend to increase the taxes. So I think that the burden on the shoulder of the formal sector is quite heavy. And no one can achieve it all. We really need to have this dialogue, like Mr. Murangira said, we really need to have this dialogue. In the Business Council, GCAM in Cameroon, our motto since this pandemic was to actually save the employment at all cost. That was the motto. Although we are all trying to do that, we know that the reality is that a lot of SMEs are going to shut down. And having SMEs failure means that you will have a lot of unemployment and a lot of people, you know, losing their job. And I think that there is a need to define a model for the formal sector to make sure that we sustain the formal sector and we help them to develop themselves and to have a better contribution to the growth. And we also need to make sure that, as Luda said, we formalize the informal sector, because we cannot just do it the way we are doing things in a long run. 2 pandemics later, then we will all be done, you know. And not only the informal sector, the formal sector is going to be is going to fail also, and this is absolutely from an economic point of view a global failure for the country and for the nation and for our continent. So for the formal sector, still the formal sector today does not have access to credit and funds. So that's something the government needs to address with a proper regulation, and there the government has a role to play, and it won't be the private sector. We can discuss about that, but they have their role to play. The other thing the GCAM has also set up is to have an employment coalition with all the organization, the employers organization, and to globally think how we can maintain jobs. Now, for the informal sector, I think that here again, government has a role to play. First is to make sure that everyone in Africa has an ID. I mean, even if you're asking for money, could be to a cooperative or to a bank, you need to have an identity. We don't all have an address, physical address, but we should have an identity. And that's the first thing. The second thing is probably in terms of education. And education, it's in a broader sense. It's in education regarding health, regarding the way to do business, to sustain your business. And another important thing for them is to make sure that we give them a legal and social protection. You know, if you are selling tomatoes, by the time you are here, you won't get any revenue. And if you owe money to someone, then you won't be able to pay your rent. So this is really a bad cycle. So to make it not a vicious, but a virtuous cycle, we really need to give them, you know, the whole framework, education, information, but also social protection. The same thing we are doing for the formal sector, we can do the same thing for informal sector. It might not cost the same or maybe give the same advantage, but there is something that needs to be addressed into that sense. And I really think that globally, Lourdes talk about, you know, the jobs, the skills. We really have a big issues in Africa about matching jobs with skills. So for this, the private sector has always been open to discuss about that. We are collaborating with ILO, we are collaborating with several organizations, but again, we cannot do everything. We really need everyone to play a role. Here in Africa, we have outdated curricula. You know, the basic thing in terms of soft skills are not addressed. And you can do what you want, but the private sector is not going to substitute itself to what needs to be done by the Ministry of Education or by the relevant people. So they really need to have a look on what are the 21st century skills we need in Africa. And I'm not talking about replicating European model or Western model. I'm talking about our own context and what is needed. And really, we really need to stress our resilience and our critical thinking in our own context. So the 4 C's that I really like to mention: communication, collaboration, critical thinking. Those are the things that no one is actually learning at school, and it's very important. We did have several discussions in our business concept. First, we set up training to teach our the private sector, our members, how to organize teleworking. It seems very simple, but you know, most of them, you can talk about biggest company or very small company, SMEs, they were all lost. So there are several basic things that needed to be taught at school. And obviously we can try to learn that on the way. But if we look at our curricula, if we train the people on the basic things, then we will perform better. So there are so many things that we need to address, but it's really a collective action with a fruitful dialogue between all parties, all stakeholders, including government, which has his role to play because they are the ones setting up the framework. Thank you.
Prof. Kalonji, being from an education background, I would like to hear from you on this discussion.
All right, so basically, I'm liking a lot of what is being said right now. And I have a very binary approach to things. It's either ones and zeros, X's and O's moving forward. So looking at how things are right now, I'm actually very optimistic of where the future is heading, first of all. Because now that we see that we've identified that there's a problem, now we can actually start addressing each problem as it is. History has already proven to us that as Africans, we are very resilient people, we are survivors. And even if we're gonna have to kick and scream our way through the struggles that we're going through right now, because we don't have access to all the jobs, access to the capital and all that, we will make the necessary adjustments to be able to survive. That being said, I like the saying that goes, it takes a village to basically raise a child, which means everybody has its part to play. The way I look at it is, when we look at the formal sector and the large corporations and all that, I think that there should be some form of regulation put in place to where how they outsource certain services, there needs to be a certain quota of, let's say, people in different age groups, regardless of background, so that we can start training or helping people build small businesses that can locally produce the resources needed for them to service what it is that they service. We import a lot of our food, a lot of our consumables. Why can we not basically make sure that each sector, people in those sectors, acquire the necessary things from those from the local market? Which means I don't necessarily need to get somebody to that has a degree, but I can get somebody who's willing and available and is of age. If it's just to unscrew a light bulb, screw a light bulb, if it's just lifting a box from here and moving it there, automatically I'm putting back money into the local economy. And I'm also showing them what it's like to wake up every day, go to a job, clock in, clock out, do the necessary, knowing that you're not only putting food on your own table, but you're helping the economy grow, and you're also paying the way forward for you to now be able to educate your kids better than what you've been educated. And I also like the other point where we say there's a lot of problem where there's access to capital. To me, that's a real and a false problem. In what sense? For example, microfinance works very well, but microfinance is only efficient, or it has its efficacy to somebody that has proper financial literacy. Because, for example, I won't say the name, there's a microfinance company that I know. They basically charge 60% interest on monies that they loan to people annually. But then the way they sell them on it is you only pay 5% each month throughout the course of the year on the money that you got. So for every $100 that you make, you only need to pay us $5. So for somebody who's not financially literate, he's going to take that money, and then obviously he's going to do part of his business. Then he's going to get a house, he's going to get a car. And from what he makes, he's only going to keep what he has to purchase back whatever commodity that he's trading or selling to keep making money. But he doesn't account for that surplus. And he also doesn't account for when, for when there's going to be an economic downturn in his sector. So he's not going to be making the same kind of revenues that he was making. So it's going to hurt him. Then they lose their houses, they lose their cars, and they're not able to even get that taste to get back into business. So this is where I think that financial institutions have to work together with governments to make capital more affordable. But every time capital is given out, I think that it should go with an accompaniment to where somebody from the sector or somebody who's financially literate can accompany them throughout the period of where they've taken that money for. So if you took, let's say, money for 3 years, during those 3 years, they need to assign somebody with you. He's not going to run your business for you, but it's going to show you to look out for the different pitfalls that you might encounter along your way, and make it so that you start being able to learn the ins and outs of how money works and how you can grow your business and how you can keep scaling. And it's only through massive scale that we're gonna be able to grow. And another point that I think we should focus on is the concept of group economics. What do I mean by that? I like what Mrs. Lubede said in the beginning as well. The majority of what we're producing keeps going to Europe, the Americas, Asia, and all these things, while there's 1.2 billion people here. Why don't we first circulate those monies, those funds, those services here first on the continent, and then the excess, you bring it elsewhere. It's like saying, as a head of the household, for example, you first want to feed all your neighbors, and then the leftovers is what you use to feed yourself and your kids. But essentially, that's what's happening in Africa. So when I talk about education, I'm not just talking about sitting on a desk and learning the theory of things. In education, I also mean when you have to sit out and watch how a person is doing the job. When they tell you about how you make a table, you don't just know the theory of making a table. You see what making a table looks like, and then you do it while you have the supervision of others. And before you know it, you're the one instructing the next person how to do it. So you have to go into a way of paying things forward instead of just looking to preserve what's there. It's only through expansion that we're going to be able to solve a lot of the issues, instead of looking for measures that is just going to try to preserve what's there, and which we know is not enough to begin with. So we have to find a way to include and incorporate as many people into these conversations and have each person play a role. And to that, even the government can take place by playing roles where if an outside economic actor wants to come and take part in the local economy, obviously you will have to tax them slightly higher, either from importing things or from importing certain businesses, to where that excess tax that you don't charge the local companies that do the same services gets redirected to a fund that could be used to properly finance people in the formal sector, to be able to start a small fruits and veg market, to be able to do whatever it is that they do. And that way, it's a never-ending cycle that keeps growing. And by making small strides and small changes, the effects are going to be much bigger.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ngema, have anything to add to this discussion?
Yes, I do have this. There's a lot, as I said, there's a lot that I wanted to share with you. I believe the solution for this is a hope. We need to have a hope, and not only hope, we also have to have the courage to embrace. First of all, to embrace ourselves, to like ourselves. This is, and to put Africa first. We have been talking about small businesses here and everything. Just something just popped out of my mind is the fact that take an example. People right now is mandate that we need to wear masks. People need to wear masks everywhere they go. But I have looked at it, see that they're African, that are making African masks. But despite that, we still have that tendency that we are going to eBay and we are purchasing masks that are coming all the way from China or elsewhere. But when we don't even know who's making those masks and how good they are, without all that information, but we choose to go to Amazon and buy masks from China or India. When we have people
stay with Mr. Ngema. I think the problem is trust. Do we trust ourselves as Africans? That's the question.
Burley answering you is not, we don't trust ourselves, and this is the problem. So I think Africa right now, we're in the position that we need to rethink and make a full break and see what is doing wrong. How can we improve the coronavirus have bring us the opportunity, despite the bad effect that it's bringing. Also, there's opportunity for us to reinvent ourselves and make value ourselves. Something just happened about in oil and gas industry. We make the minister make a mandate 2 weeks ago. He make a decree that I'll prevent expat working 3 years. If giving expat a break full up to 3 years, they need to leave, and it's meaning that you have to train someone that they will replace them. And his vision is not only for giving job to for EG people. It also go beyond that. That the mandates go clear is that if you don't find someone that can do the job in EG, you need to go to Cameroon. If you don't find someone in Cameroon, and then you go to South Africa. Africa first. That's the mentality that we need to have if we want to survive the coronavirus. This is the key. And another thing that is happening is that one thing we need to know that is that oil and gas is good. For other country is our base. Believe it or not, this is our base that we need to protect. Not only just for Equatorial Guinea, but for entire Africa. That's why one of the measurements that the EG government has taken is they give some extension to the explorers that we know that what is happening, they cannot explore the next 3 years. So they give them some extension. So what we need to do, we need to promote more African doing business with Africans. Before going in Europe or Asia, we need to first look in the neighbor. Someone said that here in the panel, it takes a village to raise a child. This is what I believe, this is what the #1 opportunity that this pandemic has brought us, that we need to make a full break, stop, and see how can we do better. Because right now we are not doing better. Africa needs to do better as African. We need to start thinking for Africa, and resources, they need to come more in Africa and less elsewhere. This is what we need to do, and to do that we need to trust ourselves, which is I'm going back for what I just said. We don't trust ourselves enough. There's more of us, we feel more comfortable when we're working for an expert is coming to me to do business instead of our African. This mentality is now the time to start for change. When you're a manager in a company, you feel more comfortable to hire, or when you own a company, you feel more comfortable having an expert, when most of the time this expert costs you more and you do less. And a lot of the real job is being done by your brother and sister, but which those ones you put them in the corner and you say, no, this is an expert, and you try more expert than you do. But I think this is the COVID has brought us, and everything that is going around the world right now is giving us a chance to pull a full break and assess how we've been running business, what have we been doing, how can we do better. One advantage that as African we have is that, first of all, our continent is the youngest one in the world, and we are the biggest, and also the virus, we used to live with we used to live with viruses, so it's not something new to us. Our immune system is so used to that. So another, I mentioned about the courage. We shouldn't be living by fear, because the way it has shown that the prediction was that Africa was going to be the chaos, but the reality has proven otherwise. It's not as more as they thought people was going to die in Africa about for a coronavirus. This hasn't happened like that, because we're so used to viruses, and this is the opportunity that the government needs to work with the company and see how we can do better instead of sitting at home. Yes, we need to make sure that we follow the safety and distancing measurement that are being put in place, but take this advantage as well, how we can communicate better, reinvent ourselves, and do what we've been doing for experts, and do that for ourselves now, right now. We've been doing so much for other countries. We've been doing so much for other continents, but I think what we should do right now, that the opportunity that the coronavirus pandemic is giving us, is to start doing something for ourselves. Start doing something for our continent. This is the moment. This is the opportunity. My ministry took his executive order that he signed last week or so. He looked at the whole picture. A lot of the job that they were doing, they were done by experts. And then when the pandemic came, they left the country. So all the job they were, and then national, they took over. And then we realized that most of the experts that they were doing jobs here, they were non-essential jobs. So experts right now they're gone, we're still running our business. The oil and gas company, they're still pumping oil. And all this has been 80%. This has been performed by national. So this to me, in somehow, this pandemic, it gives us the opportunity for Africans to realize how good we are on what we do. and something that in ourselves we've been doubting about ourselves, and just this pandemic has revealed that the real who we are as technicians, who we are as people. The what we need to do right now, attack this, because it's not just a problem for Cameroon. It's not a problem for South Africa. We need to take that as a continent, and it's a time for us to start talking to each other, start thinking for each other, and start working for Africa, and leave behind and not against Africa. Become African united, work in everything from oil and gas to the to banking, to everything that we do in business. So there's a lot that needs to be done. The conversation is good. Having topics that I want to discuss, but also want to be respectful with my panelists, because as much as I want to talk, I also know that they have some great things that they want to share.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jacinto. Listening to you, there are two things that came into my mind with everything you say. Number one, that we need to have an indigenous technological base. And number two, we need professionalization of careers. Because what you say, for example, right now, if I walk to the embassy of Philippines, which is across my embassy, I go to the embassy, I say, I want to hire a Filipino nanny. They will give me a list and the price I have to pay a Filipino nanny from the embassy of Philippines here, without going to Philippines. So I think that's one thing Africans we need to do. We need to professionalize careers so that we don't have these problems we're having right now. Dr. Jerry, I will give you 1 minute to just add something to this conversation before we move to the second block.
Yeah, I actually like what Jacinto was saying there. And I wanted just to add to say, sometimes we don't even prioritize the growth sectors in our own economies. We don't know which skills we should be growing. We should understand, for instance, a lot of jobs are in agriculture. And our system has been a system that takes people away, makes agriculture, let me use the word, unsexy. And we've got, that's where we make our food. That's where we should also be making our money. Make agriculture sexy. I'm quite excited. We're seeing now a trend where young South Africans are going into this industry because they can see. So what I'm saying is that I think it also would help. The education that we're talking about is to just make sure that people understand these are the growth sectors. These are the skills that you need to grow, to work in those sectors. And in fact, we, instead of thinking employment, how can I create employment? So our education system needs to also maybe be tweaked to change, to say, you don't educate the young Africans, talented Africans, just to think who is going to employ me, but how can I create employment for myself and for my village or for my people? I like the point about keeping the money circulating in the village, at least for, for most of the time before it leaves. Circulating the country, circulating the continent, and then it can go to fetch us more money. But I read a statistic which said in most of these, and I hate to say this, but when you see a mall mushrooming up in a village or in a location, you know that mall is not owned by that community. It's going to suck all the money out. The money is not going to circulate there. So part of the thinking that we need to have is to change some of these models that we've had. And I agree with you, sir, that this has really, your example of expatriates taking off and running away in the local, it's an excellent example. But we must have faith in our own people. Sometimes we have no faith in our own people, and that's a problem. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my dear panelists. I really enjoyed this blog. But moving on right now, because of the economy of time, we'll be giving 1 minute to each panelist to answer the question, so that we can move on to the blog. So the blog 2, post-COVID-19 action plans to minimize the possibility of entering a deeper recession. So we have 3 questions in this blog. What are the main measures to be taken to facilitate the recovery of African economy after this outbreak? I want to start with Professor Kalonji.
All right, thank you for the question. So to me, what can be done is, first off, we shouldn't have to wait for a post-COVID-19. That's critical. And like Mr. Jacinto said, we don't even know that there's going to be a post-COVID-19. So we literally have to start right now and today. And with this factor of trust, that is something that is very true. Like, we hardly trust one another. But what needs to be done is that we need to get small communities of people that are innovators and are gonna basically be the first movers in that space, to where they trust local labor, they trust local expertise, but then not just trust them, but try to document it as much as possible. Because until we see that it can be done, we won't believe it. Even if you say that, yes, you use local labor, yeah, you're saying it, but I don't know if I can believe it. But if you do it and you document it, it's going to give and encourage more and more people to be willing to do the same as well. So we basically need to start right now.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Lourdes?
For me, the main measures to facilitate the recovery in the African economy should be, first of all, stop reacting with quick fixes. That's the first thing we need to stop doing. As Jacinto said, take a step back, and also stop applying copy-paste solutions from other places. Africa is not Europe, and even within Africa, there is 54 different countries with different systems, different economies, and different situations. So have a look at, what do you need? What is it, for example? I want to go to really down examples so people that are listening to this conversation can start taking action as well. Look at the COVID pandemic, see how it has affected your own community. What are the services or products that were scarce? How can you produce those services? If you don't have the means to produce it yourself, who can you ally or who can you associate with so you can start producing or gathering those services? And when that types of initiatives come, governments also needs the main help that the government can provide to this type of initiatives is by creating not only the legal frame, but facilitating that. If someone is going to build something or open a business where they're going to increase employment, or they're going to create employment in the organization, the government should be ready to tax reductions, leases, or some sort of reduction in social contributions and so on, and do so. If we don't have the capacity to either produce or provide the services that we want, then we need to build the capacity by creating education, and we need to do it now. We don't need to be thinking all the time that, oh, no, I need a solution that within 1 year or within 2 years, I will have the solution. Education doesn't work like that, and building capacity doesn't work like that. Jacinto was just saying right now that you need.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
Go on, please go on.
Jacinto was just saying right now that in the private sector, they were given 3 years to be, to replace expatriate force. But in those 3 years, there must be a mechanism, there must be an entity or an institution where people can get those skills. Even if it's from outside or from inside the organization, there must be something in place where we can get those skills. And then we need to hold ourselves accountable. You yourself, Alejandro, you were saying that we need to professionalize our services. And part of building trust within the region means accountability. Say and do what you say you're going to do. If I pay my taxes, I want to see my taxes going outside in infrastructure. If I pay my Social Security, I want to make sure that the health system that we have works. And also, in the trading side, and this is to finish, we need to make sure as well that we have the legal frame and policies to trade with one another. If those legal frames or the trading infrastructure is not there, we also need to think about becoming that infrastructure. we ourselves can also become ambassadors of our country, even if we have not been appointed as such. So there is a little bit of entrepreneurship, of thinking outside the boxes and waiting for someone else to give us the go ahead to do things. We can also do things on our own.
Dr. Francois, what do you think?
Thank you. Three things. One, I think there is a need to support the structural transformation of Africa. It's overdue. 60 years of independence, it's unacceptable that we continue to be a continent of consuming used cars, consuming used clothes, consuming everything used from Europe, from Asia, from everywhere. So it's overdue. I think you have to stop this. I think it's stupid. Huh? Look, when these people, all the people, they say as we are stupid because they cannot continue like this. That way we lose our dignity. When we are victims of racism everywhere because we don't have our dignity. How can continue wearing used clothes from China or from Europe, from everywhere? How can we continue like this? We have to stop this rubbish. That one. Second, of course, there is a need to support business.
Doctor, before we go on, I just want to ask you this question specifically as somebody that worked for the International Labour Organization. What do you think? What measures do you think can be put in place to check African standard, so that we know that the same products that comes into Africa are the same standard as the one that goes to America, goes to Europe, or any other part of the world?
You know, there is an issue of governance. In many countries, I think they have laboratories to check this product, but sometimes there is corruption. You know, this is everywhere. So it's about governance. How the issue is governance. How to ensure that even we have laboratory to check all this product, how this function, if there is this function properly. So I think maybe we have to. I don't. This governance is a big issue for everywhere, for in every sector. So I think we have to work on all governance issue in every African country. It's at all levels. I'm not talking about political only. I'm talking about even our organizations. I'm talking about our civil society. I'm talking about our communities, even religious. There's something wrong in governance. So we have to fix this governance issue to ensure that everything we do is properly done and respecting norms. So I have no solution, but we have to fix the issue of governance in Africa, in everywhere. So everything we are talking about, it's mainly about governance. Even in a country where we have democratic regimes, sometimes, it's almost the same. The corruption is almost everywhere. So this issue and say you can set up any measure we want, but if the governance issue is not fixed, we continue to have the same problems.
Thank you very much. I would like just to add some anecdote that I heard so many years ago. They asked one African head of state one simple question. They asked him, "Sir, what do you think that can be eradicated in Africa, cholera or corruption?" And the head of state said none. And the following question was like, "Why?" He said, "Because both of them are at home." So I think corruption is an African institution, I would say that. So I want to move to Mrs. Rain. What do you think we can do?
Okay, so some measure. I think that times ago, certain country has started trade agreement, free trade agreement with Europe, and not having the same agreement inside or within Africa. So I think that the first point is to have a free trade exchange and really to accelerate our ongoing program, ZCAF, and the African passport. We need to establish economic partnership between our country. We need to promote the free circulation of people, goods, and services, and to make it effective. Like, you don't just say it, or the college of our head of state agreed on that, and then the practice or the reality when you want to move from one border to another in Central Africa, and they start asking you either money or something else, really to make things effective. I think that we also need to promote and to develop the Made in Africa, which embodies what my colleagues in this panel have also said, really to promote this Made in Africa and to have this big African industrialization plan, and to make sure that if there is a specific domain where I need something, I can find it in this country or in that country, and really, you know, to have a sort of organization within Africa. And lastly, probably we really need to monitor all existing programs, because everything that I've mentioned already exists. If you go to AU, you will see a lot of programs that are run by African Union Commission, and all those programs are ongoing right now, but they're not effective. And I think that on the implementation and the effectiveness of those programs, we really need to make people more accountable. And then I join Lourdes on that. We are borrowing money, a lot of money, since like decades, to do things that has never been done. So at a certain point of time, either we stop borrowing money or lending this money to countries that are not playing the game. And we really need, from a regional point of view, to make people accountable, and to manage and to monitor the execution and implementation of plan. It's absolutely unbelievable to lend money for a road, and then, you know, the project is just ongoing for like 5 years, and at the end of the day, you don't see any road. So everything is already there. We just need to make those things, we just need to make them happen.
Thank you very much. Dr. Jerry, what will be the new trend in entrepreneurship after COVID-19? And how do you think the adverse effect of this crisis can be overcome and go beyond to emerge stronger?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think what's going to be really some of the key trends post this thing, or even during this thing, the points that have been made this afternoon around what can we do? What can we manufacture? What can we then sell to each other? I mean, that's right now, the whole, call it the mask industry. In as much as people are going on eBay or other platforms to purchase, but if you, here where I live, I'm aware of a booming mask industry that has started. Women making these masks, sewing these masks, and obviously selling them at entrances of malls and other places, even the hawkers on the roads now. So there are things that people can do now. The question is, do they make enough money out of it? But I think entrepreneurs respond to a need. They see a need. What we need to do is to support them when they do that. So my point would be, I think it would help to identify what are the value chains, who is selling what, where, and where can that go? You're talking about intertrade, for instance, over there. So those are the things. I think we just need and who is better at doing that, and we're not better at doing it, and allow that country, those people, to be able to do it, and we buy it from them without, at least the money will be circulating in our own continent, isn't it? And we're growing our own people. So that's one thing that I think entrepreneurs can do. Those should be the trends. If we are learning anything from what has been said this afternoon, what COVID has exposed to us, that we have the people, we have the skills. Let's trust them to give us what we require. So I think entrepreneurs will take those opportunities like they always do. They have the skills, they have the insights. They say there's an opportunity there, I'm going to go for it. In terms of overcoming, again, I think one is going to start sounding like a broken record, because it's going to take collaboration. no, someone has already referred to the fact that it takes a village to, to help a child grow. And I think it will take a village to grow our economies, which means we must collaborate, because if we don't collaborate, then we're not going to be successful. So our states must actually do that, must enable that to happen. I also do think that, I think it's been difficult for people. Taxes must come down. I think they must come down in order to enable the new entrepreneurs, instead of charging exorbitant taxes, at least to have a base to establish themselves. So during or even post-COVID, I think there has to be some adjustment in terms of how the tax structure in countries work. It can't just remain the same, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacinto.
Yes, thank you again. I think one thing we need to recognize that is, as I said before, we need to learn how to live with that virus. So there's a most likely that in the future, some countries they will be resilient in dealing with African countries. Some country may not allow us to visit their countries, because as of today we have seen in the news that African, they are being beaten everywhere because they say they have the virus and so on. The one thing we need to do is to put a full stop from country and people that are taking advantage to Africa. This is one thing we need to do. If we don't do that, it will be very difficult for us to survive. We need to do that, and we need to also produce and consume from Africa and for Africans. Something happened today. We had a meeting, and as you guys may know, Equatorial Guinea is one of the biggest producer of EGLNG in Africa. And the question that my boss asks is, how come that I keep selling EGLNG to India, to Japan, to China, when I have Cameroon, Nigeria, Ghana here that they need EGLNG, that they need LNG to power. So those are the initiatives that we need to bring alive, that we need to support. This is the way, the only way African economy, our economy can survive. Otherwise, we will not learn from COVID-19. Again, brother and sister, all the panelists, those that are listening to me, we need to start thinking for Africa and consume ourselves, and put a stop to those countries and individuals that they are taking advantage for Africa. And we need to do that now, because we don't know how long this is going to last. We may think that the coronavirus pandemic will end tomorrow. It may not end. It will be, we have to live with it. It's not going. I'm not sure that it will go. I hope that it will go, but it doesn't look like it. And it will be more difficult for us to travel to Europe, to US, and other countries. But I think there's a way that someone said that here, that we need to find a way how to, we can do business easily with Cameroon. Cameroon can do business easily with South Africa without having to go through that bureaucracy of, that exists at the moment. We need to start thinking for Africa. We need to start doing things for the good of Africans. Otherwise, we are not going to survive on this. So those are the very few things that I can share with you guys, that one thing we need to put is a free trade for Africa, in Africa, and put Africa first. That's the only way we will survive.
I like what you say, but in my point of view, there is a problem. There is a conflict of interest. As Africans, we have African institutions. For example, let's take an African Union, for example. 80% of the budget of the African Union is being financed by who? Non-Africans. We have the African Development Bank. After Nigeria, the biggest shareholder is USA, Japan, and this. And those teams and those interests are the ones that is tied in Africa where to the status quo. Because with these people dictating us, I don't think we can move on. So before we move on, I would just like, if anybody have anything to add to this panel, just raise your hand, I'll give you the floor. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move, okay, Dr. Jerry.
To the point you're making there, Chairperson, I just wanted to say part of progress comes from people having the political will. I think the political will sometimes is not there. Therefore, we end up with that. I mean, our governments, because we elect people to lead us and to parliamentarians to make the rules. But what we are saying is, if the political will is not there, it's not going to happen. So what are the citizens supposed to do? Rebel? I don't think we want to be there yet. But we just need political will from those that lead us in order to do these things, make these things. I mean, here in the panel, we can talk about inter-trade, inter-Africa trade, but there are lawmakers that must make that happen. Then the professionals will do it, but the lawmakers must make it happen first.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Professor.
Yes.
Just a few seconds so that we can move.
Yes, real short. So basically, with the last point that was just made, I also feel that yes, the lawmakers they need to have that will, but for a lot of the times they can't really do it because you depend on the hand that feeds you. But if the people can get behind the lawmakers, because we look for people to vote, we always look for government to do stuff for us. When can we in turn do stuff for government? For example, like we complain that the government borrows a lot of money. Why don't we actually in turn go and freely contribute to government efforts? That, oh, to France today, I'm going to get a, let's say, $1 or $2 billion deficit in my budget. But then I have, let's say, 80 million or 300 million people in my constituency. If everybody puts at least $1, they're not going to starve, but at least everybody would have contributed to us getting closer to covering that deficit so that we can start focusing on the things that help us instead of the things that hinder us and expect for governments to do everything for us. But we also have to come to that table and participate. That was the only point I wanted to make.
Thank you very much. So we move to the last session, to the last block of this session, the new work system after COVID-19, digital transformation of the productive model and the economy. Currently, and depending on the type of work to be done, many workers provide their services from their home. So teleworking. So the first question I'm going to ask you, Mrs. Rain, could technology and the digital transformation of the productive model and the economy be the key to recovery from this pandemic? Explain your point of view.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So actually, digitalization, innovation, and technology was one of the, I think, the new trends in entrepreneurship after COVID-19. I think digitalization, health services, and agricultural sector. So regarding digitalization, I think that obviously it's a sector itself, but it's transversal to all our other sector of the economy, and really we need to have a digitalization plan for Africa. We really need to make sure that we implement it in every one of our countries. Just an anecdote, we had a discussion at GCAM about the success of IT companies during the COVID. And then I mentioned the fact that as a consultancy firm in ICT, I did help out several organizations to set up Zoom accounts, set up webinar, and several things, okay? But getting zero money for those consulting services. All the money is going to Zoom in the US. So this reflects, our states of consumers. We just consume things that are coming from elsewhere. No one pays me for giving advices on how to do the teleworking, but they will give the money to software, to publishers, and all those companies. So it's probably a strategy Obviously, we'll use those tools because the world is going to change. We're not going to do the business the way we were doing this before COVID-19. Everything will change, but we need to understand that this is something that is the strategic issues. Whenever your data, your local content, or your access is coming from the outside, you owe nothing. So you cannot create value upon that. I give you an example. So basically, if I have data, what we call open data, if I have data coming out from maybe the agricultural sector, a services company can create value out of that and sell services. One clear example could be on health services. Like if you have access to data for health services, maybe you can start produce insurance that are targeting the informal sector because you have access to data. But who owns our African data right now? Facebook, Google, and others companies. So we are talking about something we really not, I mean, it's strategic and everything is out of our domain of competencies of our core sovereignties. So it's really important for us as African to look at these things. You can see that Facebook is trying to set up fiber optic cables to Africa. Once they will source out the access to the internet and the data, they will be able to sell all services online, and we will break our whole economy. We will lose the informal sector because they will all be selling on Facebook, and then after that, everything will be sourced out from China or any other country. So digital transformation, yes, but it's really strategic. And at this moment, we do not have the power or maybe the knowledge on it. So it's really important for our political, for our politics to understand the critical and the issues and the risk upon our data to create value.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lubles.
I think Reina has a very, very important point in the sense of producing data. And though I share, her feeling about making value out of it, but at this moment, and since we don't have those resources yet, I think we can really benefit from the data that we can gather, even if that data is in foreign platforms. I think that first of all, we need to have access to that data. First of all, to help us run our day-to-day business in a different way. We need to see our businesses from a different perspective. How to use technology to pay our bills, how to use technology to pay our taxes, how to use technology to process info about our population. You just mentioned yourself right now, if we had all this information about the population and where, for example, by gender or by age, by sector or whatever, maybe the response to COVID-19 could have been more efficient. But before we can do that, we need to have that data. And the second thing about technology is by providing that data and by knowing that that data can help us to make better decisions, we've already created value in the sense of how to scale the production of the things that we are good at. If we know we have statistics on what are our production or what are the services that are more demanded outside or elsewhere or in a neighboring country, we will be in a better position to strategize how to scale our product and sell it outside as well. And foremost as well, as Kalonji was saying, if we have the data in technology and we know that, well, this is not something that we can do right now because we don't have the skills, then it also serves us to know what type of skills we need to start producing from the educational sector, from the private sector, what type of capacity we need to be building. And so for me, it's for technology, but when we need to have a very close look at this type of skills that we need in our own economies, not in the neighbor, not in Europe, not elsewhere, in our economies, in order that in the near future, we can take on that. So that capacity needs to be start to be built right now.
Thank you very much. Because we have consumed our time, I will go directly to the questions and answers from our viewers. So I will give the opportunity to Dr. Francois, Dr. Jerry, and Professor Kalunji to answer these questions to our viewers. So the first question from Estella and Chama say companies and government have taken measures to maintain employment, but we all share the opinion that those measures are not sustainable for a long time. How long can we anticipate to still be able to run companies under current environment? Can we realistically say that many business may shut down in the informal sector? So, Dr. Jerry.
I missed part of the question there. So maybe let me allow that there was an echo on my side.
Okay. So said after let me get it. To say, can we realistically say that many businesses may shut down, especially the informal sector, because the measurements the government are putting in place right now, they are not sustainable?
Yeah, I think some business will in the informal sector will struggle, may shut down. Yes, I mean, but I do hope that they will come back again. As I said earlier, that those businesses serve a specific need, isn't it? So as long as the need is there, but remember, this is a ripple effect. If people lose jobs, they don't have income to purchase goods and so forth and so on. So there's a ripple effect. But I think as soon as the economy starts building, even during this process now, people are going to come back. But it's going to be a slow growth. We have history. If you go back to what has happened before, how economies fall and then how they come back again. Because this is a major impact, but economies have fallen before and they come back again and they rebuild.
Thank you very much. Going this question, I'm going to ask Dr. Francois. What are the three top important elements needed to encourage intertrade between countries on the African continent? This question is asked by anonymous attendee. The three top important elements need to encourage intertrade between countries on the African continent.
What I think somebody said about political will. It's easy to set up a mechanism, institution, or legal framework, but if there is no political will, you cannot change anything. That's one. It is very important to have political will. Second, I think we have I don't know, but I think beside the political will, we need also to see how our countries are divided since 1885, I think. Divide is a small, some countries are very, very small, very tiny, although even if they are big enough, but they divide also. So I think we have to look at what this bad legacy, the virus of the division of Africa. So to abolish these artificial borders. I don't see when I'm based in Cameroon, but I don't see the difference between Cameroon and Central African Republic. I don't see the difference between Cameroon and Nigeria and Guinea Equatorial and Gabon and Congo and so on. So I don't see why we keep on these artificial border. Why we are stubborn to continue to defend these dividing borders. So it's the mentality. So that's the second one. How do we do it? How to push? And I think, for me, the young generation, like some of you, young generation, you can do something about it. The older generation, they can't do it because they are tired. So I think you have to do something about it. You have to change all these things. The young generation, you can do it something. You can do it. You can organize yourself and do to change it, change things. So you can continue even this free trade. What is financing this institution? Somebody said it. The African Union. It has been the building itself built by Chinese. You know, 54 countries, they cannot build their own headquarters. Is it impossible? They don't have enough money to do it. Why do you have? So you have the budget of the African Union. The budget, 60%, more than 60% is funded by the European Union. So I don't see how we can move.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I would like to move to the next question. The next question is going to be, good day. Do you not think that without consistent revenue, local people will not be able to get the same product as the one African countries used to send out? This question I want to hear from Mr. Jacinto.
Hello, Alejandro, please, can you come back to your question?
Do you not think that without a consistent revenue, local people will not be able to get the same product as the one African countries used to send out?
Thank you. I highly appreciate the question. Thank you very much. Before I go to that question, I will, if you may allow me to add something.
This question is from Mr. Joseph Nimeni.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mineme. Before I answer to your question, if you may allow me to go to the previous one, there's something a little bit that I wanted to add on that. I think there is a more, it's not only political will. I believe it's something beyond that. It's beyond the political will. This is related to me, in my humble opinion, is related 100% of consumer will. And let me explain. It's not a politician, it's not a lawmaker that tell me when I have vacation to go to vacation in Sweden instead of South Africa. It's my choice that I go to Sweden instead of South Africa and promote into Africa tourism and support South Africa economy. It's by choice that myself, I decide to go to Sweden, in France, in Holland, instead of Cameroon, Nigeria, Cape Verde. Is my own choice. The politician has nothing to do with that. So there is something that some changes need to be made in African people's mind. We need to start embracing ourselves. We need to start appreciating what is ours. We need to start being proud of Africa. This is what's happening. I know there might be some problem with the lawmakers, but I think 90% of the question, the problem is also with the African himself, ourselves, because we don't appreciate who we are sometimes. We don't appreciate what we are is made in Africa. We rather let's look at ourselves. We're all wearing African, American, and European brand mark when there's some good, beautiful clothes that are made in Africa. The problem is with ourselves. It's not with the lawmakers. It starts with ourselves. That's just something that I wanted to add. But going to the question that was asked to me, yes, that is true. I believe I share with your opinion. If there is not a lot of revenue, there is nothing that it can support us to buy this, we will be in trouble. And what needs to be done is for us to divide that, what needs to be done, we need to start supporting in African and Africa needs to support each other. Cameroon needs to support Nigeria. Nigeria needs to support Cameroon. This is the only way we can get out of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm moving to the final question, which is going to be asked to Professor regarding the technology that is increasing. Okay, hold on a second. Regarding the technology that is increasingly growing, do you not think that we also need to focus on strengthening the education of our population now, so that in the coming years, they could be able to contest other continents? Professor.
Thank you for the question. But what I would start off by saying is, you know, we refer to Africa as the dark continent. So I don't just see it in terms of race per se, but also because of the fact that we don't have the energy to even be able to consistently power that technology to as many people as possible. So even for us, with all this technology that we're experiencing, like Zoom and all these things, it's only a small portion of the population that can even afford to continuously and consistently access all these different things. So yes, education, we said in the beginning, is critical, but before we even get there, we first have to strengthen our economies and our ability to be able to afford things. And once we can afford these things, now we can also empower ourselves to not only have the right infrastructure, but also have the right technologies to put in place. Because in all those other continents where they have like the top schools, you find a lot of African diaspora in there and are very excellent at their jobs. But then we don't have an environment conducive enough to attract them back here and bring back the knowledge and the information that they have. So instead of reinventing that wheel, let's first set up an environment that will draw all that knowledge back to us so that we can build from there.
Thank you very much. All that leads to what I mentioned earlier, that we need to focus on indigenous technological base. I want to thank each and every one of you today. We come to the conclusion of our session today. This, as I mentioned earlier, this session was put together by the Ministry of Labor of Equatorial Guinea, the Ministry of Civil Service of Equatorial Guinea, iCube Farm and iCube Farm Foundation, and Clarence Associate, which is a company who is helping to put all and package all these things together. So I want to thank each and every one. Mrs. Lourdes, thank you for joining us. Dr. Francois, Dr. Jerry, Professor Kalunji, Mr. Jacinto, and Mrs. Rain. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, gracias.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks.